friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. If you watched my recently currently reading video, I talked about Stars Above by Marissa Meyer and how I was struggling a little bit to get through it and that I had temporarily DNF'd it. And one of my friends, Alexandra, said, I can't believe you're reading more than one book at once. That just blows her mind. And yeah, it blows mine too. My plan is to never read more than one book at once because I have a million things going on in my regular life, and just to pile on multiple books is just absolutely insane. But this particular book is short stories, so I wasn't currently reading it per se. I would read a short story, put it aside, read another book, read another short story, read another book. So they were just kind of all opened on Goodreads at the same time under my currently reading tab. So anyway, I really decided that I either need to DNF it or I need to read it. I had to once again pick it up and read it, and I just couldn't do it. And I was so bummed because the short story that I was really looking forward to reading was the last one. If you don't know, there's 9 short stories in here. The Keeper, Glitches, The Queen's Army, Carwell's Guide to Being Lucky, After Sunshine Passes By, The Princess and the Guard, The Little Android, The Mechanic, and Something Old, Something New. And honestly, that's the one that I was most excited to read, but I don't skip ahead in books. So if I was going to get to that story, I had to get through all of the other stories. So even though I don't have a great track record with audiobooks, I decided to use the Overdrive app and get the audiobook from my library. Now, I don't know who read it. To me, for someone that doesn't like audiobooks, I was quite often taken aback by, she would start using a voice for a character, but then it wasn't consistent, and I would start thinking it was another character. So what I did, and I had a little bit more success with, was when I was actually reading along with her. So that really helped when I read along with it. But sometimes, I would be in the bath or in the shower and I was still wanting to continue it, and I wouldn't have my earbuds in or my book. I would just have my my listening device, and so I would just be able to play it. But then I would get really confused and I felt like I was skipping around even though I wasn't trying to. I don't know, it was just a very weird audiobook experience, but I did manage to get through this. And overall, I don't think I would have been able to read it had it not been for the audiobook. So I do have the audiobook to thank for that. I ended up rating this 3 stars because if you love the Lunar Chronicle world, and I do, it's one of my favorite series, or it was when I read it. I did really enjoy it. Like I said, I haven't picked them up or reread any of them. My opinions may have changed, but I just really loved the characters. I loved the writing. I loved the world building, and I loved the sci-fi elements thrown in. They were really accessible to people that do not read sci-fi. So I really did love that world, and these stories give a little backstory or, a little kind of epilogue to the series. Cinder I enjoyed well enough. Scarlet was definitely my favorite book in the series. Cress was super interesting, and even though it's one of the thicker books, I got through it so fast. And Winter, I was a little bit disappointed by, to be completely honest. And Fairest, I thought it was, good enough for a villain story. This one was just good enough for short story collection. I did like that we got a little bit more backstory about certain characters, and we got to see, what the future holds for these characters in the last story. There were a couple that just seemed to drag on, I really don't even care about this story type thing. And I think that was the problem, and that happened in the very beginning. Because I think if you're in a series of books for a very long period of time, you kind of already expand on the world yourself as the reader, and the before and after and kind of all in between, or at least I do. And so a lot of this I felt like I kind of already knew in the back of my head, but it was nice. So you do get introduced into what happened to them before we met them in their perspective novel in the series. The last story, of course, is my favorite. If you know anything about me in the Lunar Chronicles, you will know that the last story was my favorite. I really did go into this book just wanting to know who got married, because that's kind of what I heard, is that the last story, someone in the series does get married, and I was just holding out who gets married, and I did assume that it was going to be two particular characters, and I was happy with that, but at the same time I was like, I don't want it to be them, I want it to be these guys. So ended up being, I was pleasantly surprised, and the story actually started one way, so I was thinking, I'm right, and then it went another way, and I was like, oh yay, and then the ending was just so adorable and so cute, and so like, and actually there were parts in that I was like getting teary-eyed, because you know, it is a wedding and it's just like emotional, and just the words that you speak to the one you love, and you know, how you feel on that day. I don't know, it was super fun. Specifically in this series, since they are a little bit sci-fi, you were kind of thrown into stuff and you kind of had to like figure it out as you go, and I guess that's better than a huge info dump, but sometimes it just made the beginning part of each book, and specifically this book, a little hard to get into. Like, who are we talking about here? And then you kind of like start piecing it together, and then some of them were definitely shorter than others. But like I said, the audiobook definitely helped me to read this. So if it wasn't for the audiobook, I probably would not have been able to read this. If I would have read this closer to when I read the rest of the books in this series, I probably would have been a little bit more excited about it. But it seems like it's been so long since I've read those books. It's at least been a year. And then trying to get into this, it was a little lackluster. But if you are a fan of the Lunar Chronicles, I highly suggest that you still pick it up and maybe, you know, try to read it one short story at a time, or try the audiobook. Another thing that I noticed, like I said, I don't read or listen to audiobooks often. This particular narrator definitely tried to do different, you know, voices for the different characters, but she wasn't consistent with that. But also, I don't know if they get the art copy and then they start doing the audiobook, or like how that whole side works. But there were definitely moments, because I was reading along as I was listening, there were definitely times where things were changed from this print and the audiobook. Like, there are a few things that are different. Nothing major, but just like word choices were different. And I think that I did maybe prefer one over the other, but like in one instance I preferred the audiobook version, and then in the other instance I preferred the print version. So that was really hard. But it would take me out of the story a little bit when it wasn't like perfectly matched up. I was like, what? Oh yeah. Because I'm still kind of reading along, but you know, listening to it as well. So anyway, I did finish Stars Above. Thank heavens, because I was so worried that I wasn't going to be able to. Finish this one up, 3 stars. Let me know if you've read it and what you think, and Wedding of the Century or what. Anyway, talk to you guys in my next video. Hope you enjoyed this one. I know it's a little bit rambly. I'm still sick, and spring break is almost over, and I'm really sad because I was sick the entire time, and yeah.